I suspect that in our loathing of totalitarianism, there is infused a good deal of admiration for its efficiency. T.S. Eliot. Welcome to Reality Bites. Today is Monday, August 28th, 2023. And today we will be looking at episode 3 of my 4-part series, which will be looking at some of the speeches about the content of what happened during the BRICS summit this last week. Okay, so that being said, there was a lot of talk prior to the start of this conference that there will be no talk about de-dollarization, but that is not the case. They did speak quite a bit about de-dollarization, which means pretty much dethroning the American dollar as the world reserve currency and the petrodollar, okay? If you want to know what that means, check out my episode 1 that goes through the Bretton Woods agreement. The episode 1 kind of gives a history over where the current financial system came from and gives some context as to why BRICS was developed to begin with. Okay, so it goes over the Bretton Woods agreement after World War II, the creation of the IMF and the World Bank, and how they started giving out loans and kind of kept underdeveloped countries in loan traps to keep them impoverished while extorting their resources. Okay, then we talk about the collapse of the Bretton Woods Agreement and the introduction of the petrodollar, and what that looks like for the world. So that is when where all oil and gas trade and purchases need to be done in American dollars. Now that is what propped up the United States for so long, as their currency was not backed by gold, and so their currency, the United States dollar, was kind of backed by military might and being the world reserve currency in petrodollar. So all oil and gas were purchased and traded in US dollars, and that's what has given them the power that they have held on to for so long. Okay, so and then the second video that I made was so in my first video we ended off with a realization that the BRICS countries are in fact pushing Agenda 30 as well as the West, and they are pushing these sustainable development goals, which is, from what I gather from my research, is communism guised as climate change. Like, we are being pushed this new initiative, a new agenda, new world order. Everything is if you know history and how human nature works, having an equal playing field and being equal never really works out. Okay, communism, socialism, Marxism is great in theory, but it never works out because of human nature. So we're going to start off with this South African Foreign Minister, Pandor. She explains why she thinks that the sessions at the BRICS Summit have been a success.
I think the sessions have gone so far very, very well. The briefings to the heads of state, the innovative thinking that the new president of the New Development Bank is bringing into the bank. We now have Dilma Rousseff, the former president of Brazil, as president of the NDB, and she indicated some really exciting thinking about the future and the whole discourse around the use of local currencies. So this is a matter that is clearly on the agenda of the Board of Governors of the NDB, and we look forward to hearing more about that at the next summit, which will be in Russia. So I'm feeling very positive. I think the sessions have gone so.
So she said something very interesting. So BRICS countries have developed a new bank. It's called the New Development Bank, and I'll be getting into that in my next episode. So in episode 4, we will be discussing this New Development Bank. It's kind of similar to the IMF and World Bank, where they will be giving out financing and loans to underdeveloped countries to help them develop infrastructure, to help to allow them to be on a more level playing field so they can trade and sell and export and import on a more sustainable level. Okay. And there is also a new payment system and a new monetary system. And down the road, they're even saying one currency to be utilized amongst the BRICS countries. Okay, so where do we see that talk happening before? When you have a one world government type of thing, and then you have one world currency. So that's not going to be happening right away, but that's something to put into your pocket and to keep in mind for the rest of the presentation and in the episodes, okay? So let's keep going. So next we have Vladimir Putin and his speech. So it is a 14-minute speech. I won't be playing the whole thing. I have compartmentalized it, and I will be stopping it at some points to kind of give my commentary. A lot of these leaders during this summit, and you'll see in the speeches, say key things, okay? I was having some dialogues and conversations with some individuals on Twitter for the last couple of days, and a lot of people, are kind of in denial, saying, when I had mentioned that BRICS is pushing Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, they're like, that's the West and NATO and like the UN, and I'm like, yes, it's the UN, it's not NATO, and but yes, the West also push it, but they're saying, well, this is a different Agenda 2030. This is BRICS's own Sustainable Development Goals. It has nothing to do with the UN. Unfortunately, I wish I could be proven wrong by these people, because I thought that this was kind of like some hope coming for the world. I'm not trying to be doomsday. We can still overcome this if the people come together and say no, okay? But it's being sold and it's being rebranded as a different thing to sell it, okay? And so this is not BRICS' own Agenda 2030 and Sustainable Development Goals. This is the UN's, and you will see President Vladimir Putin specifically label it the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Okay, so let's get to this. And please bear with me. My computer's kind of acting up. This is my 5th time trying this. So all my other speeches are overdubbed, like voice dubbed in English. This one is not, and I thought it would be quite dry for me to just leave silence and for you to read it. And I'm planning on giving commentary as well. So I'm going to read it, and I'm sorry if it gets all jumbled up, okay? So we're going to start here at 16 seconds. And this little segment here, he actually starts off by talking about how they want to accelerate the Sustainable Development Goals, okay? I would like to note that holding such business forums on a regular basis, along with the systemic work of the BRICS Business Council, which brings together top businessmen and heads of the major companies of the 5 countries, plays an immense practical role in promoting mutual trade and investments, enhancing cooperation ties, and expanding direct dialogue among the business communities, and thus effectively contributes to accelerated socioeconomic growth of our states and achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. There it is, right there. Here, you can take a look at that. Okay, that's at 53 seconds, in case you're wondering. Let's keep going. It is important that this forum focuses on such pressing issues as the post-pandemic economic recovery of the BRICS states, improvement of citizens' well-being, industrial modernization, development of effective transport and logistics chains, and stimulation of equitable technology transfers. These challenging and complex tasks need to be tackled against the backdrop of the increasingly volatile stock and currency markets, energy and food markets, coupled with substantial inflationary pressure stemming from inter alia, I don't know what that is, the irresponsible large-scale money creation, by a number of countries seeking to mitigate the effects of the pandemic, which has led to the accumulation of private and public debt, which is true. The global economic situation is also seriously affected by the illegitimate sanctions practice and illegal freezing of assets by sovereign states, which essentially amounts to the trampling upon of all basic norms and rules of free trade and economic life. Okay, I'm going to pause that right there. So currently, America is having some sort of economic catastrophe happening. Canada's having a housing bubble about to be burst. We have inflation going through the roof. Spending is not being mitigated and not being curbed both in the United States and in Canada. It seems like those leaders are purposefully running the countries into the ground. Okay, but that we're not the only ones. China's also on the verge of having their own Lehman Brothers situation going on there. Evergrande or Evergrande, however you want to say it, which is like a housing developer or property developer. They have just filed bankruptcy with some banks in the United States and New York. So they're about to implode. Their economy in China is not doing so good either, like at all. And we have Russia's, I think the inflation in Russia is also quite substantial. And the ruble, I think the ruble just collapsed a little bit from what I remember. So it's like a perfect storm for some sort of financial reset or some sort of financial system change. Okay, and like he said, the debt situation is not sustainable. They brought in all of these, free money, stipends with the COVID thing that happened. Okay. Shortage of resource, growing inequality, rising unemployment, and aggravation of other chronic problems in the global economy are the direct consequence of this. Prices for food, basic agricultural products, and crops are forced up, making the most vulnerable poor countries suffer the most. Importantly, under these circumstances, the BRICS states have stepped up their interaction and our joint work to ensure economic growth and sustainable development brings concrete, tangible results. More and more new infrastructure and investment projects are being launched, mutual trade is growing, industry contacts are expanding. The main thing is that our cooperation is based on the principles of equality, partner support, and respect, and that is what lies at the core of our association's forward-looking strategic course, the course that reflects the aspirations of most of the world's community, the so-called global majority. Okay, we're going to stop right there for a second. So, this sounds great. Okay, they're all going to work together. These countries, no one's going to be the leader. No one's going to be more powerful than the other. It's all going to be egalitarian, everyone on the same level playing field, working together to create a world that's full of peace and prosperity. Does it sound a little bit too good to be true? Or are we falling for this again? Remember what happened the last 3 years. Do you think the governments have the layman's best interest in mind? Just ask yourself this question, please. Okay? Please be honest. Like, I would love this to be true, and I hope that it is. Okay, down further in this presentation today, we will see that they're even saying that Western countries can be part of BRICS as well. There's some stipulation as to what they cannot do, and we'll touch upon that later. But let's just not put all of our eggs in some sort of external savior, because has that ever worked for us before? No, it has not. We need to pay attention to what's going on, but we also need to take care of ourselves. Happened there. people are people are getting used to getting free money checks from the government, and having to rely on the government more and more. Okay, and so it is clear that this is there's something bigger going on here. All right, let me just be quiet and I'll keep going. I would also like to point out that the share of the BRICS countries, with their population totaling more than 3 billion people, now accounts for nearly 26% of the global GDP. Our 5 countries are ahead of the G7 in terms of purchasing power. Okay, and these speeches were before they added the other 6 countries at the end of the summit. So now I believe their gross GDP combined is now over 30%. All right, let's move on to, he's going to start talking about de-dollarization now, okay? The objective and irreversible process of the de-dollarization of our economic ties is gaining pace. We are working to fine-tune effective mechanisms for mutual settlements, and monetary and financial control. Okay. They had said prior to the summit that they would not be talking. So they said that on the agenda, de-dollarization was not going to be discussed. And here we have it. Okay. And monetary control. As a result, the share of US dollar in export and import operations within BRICS is declining. Last year, it stood at only 28.7%. Incidentally, during the summit, we will discuss in detail the entire range of issues related to the transition to natural currencies in all areas of economic cooperation between our 5 nations. Okay. Now he's going to talk about the new bank that they've made. The BRICS New Development Bank, which has already become a credible alternative to existing Western development institutions, has a great role to play in these efforts. So that is the World Bank and the IMF. Okay, so this is big. They've already the process of the de-dollarization and the use of the American dollar had already been in decline for a little bit. In conclusion, I would like to invite representatives of your country's business circles to attend the Eastern Economic Forum in Russia that will take place on September 10th and 13th. So they have an Eastern Economic Forum, like the World Economic Forum. They have an Eastern Economic Forum, which is interesting. Russia is ready to work jointly to promote a more balanced approach to the climate change in the international arena. Our country is consistently implementing the National Low Carbon Development Strategy. We plan to reach carbon neutrality of the Russian economy not later than 2060, including through the introduction of technological innovations, modernization of infrastructure for access to affordable and clean energy, conservation of ecosystems on land and sea. We understand that the implementation of the climate goals can be facilitated by a variety of technologies, including those that have been in use for a long time already, such as nuclear generation, hydropower, and gas motor fuel. Okay, so they say the conservation of land and sea. When you put it through the lens of the WEF and the Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, that is probably conserving land by putting everybody into 15-minute cities. It will. I touched upon that in my second video when we talked about the nitrogen bans and the usurping of farmland from generational farmers. So that is what they mean by conservation of land and sea, not being able to move around, not being able to utilize the sea for transportation, putting limits on how far people can move around, okay, and property ownership. So that is what they mean by conservation of land and sea with regards to sustainable development goals, okay? And you can see there that he was talking about climate change quite a bit. Now, it's funny because they the China and Russia, they are against the trans stuff, and we that makes them seem like they're on another page, right? And that their head is on, they're screwed on properly, and that they're more ideologically aligned with perhaps some conservatism. But this stuff is not. That's a smokescreen for people to be distracted. Because look what's happening now. There's stuff going on behind the scenes, and we are all being played for the fool. All right. It's very hard for me to present today for some reason. My computer keeps crashing, and maybe something doesn't want me to do this. All right, let's go. Here we have President Xi Jinping giving his speech. I don't have to read it, which is great. So one thing that he goes over is saying international rules must be written jointly rather than being dictated by those with the strongest muscles or the loudest voices. We need to accelerate the BRICS expansion process. Okay, here we are.
International rules must be written and upheld jointly by all countries, based on the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, rather than dictated by those with the strongest muscles or the loudest voice. Ganging up to form exclusive groups and packaging their own rules as international norms are even more unacceptable. BRICS countries should practice true multilateralism, stick to solidarity and oppose division, uphold the UN-centered international system,
Uphold the UN-centered international system,
support and strengthen the WTO-centered multilateral trading system, and reject the attempt to create small circles or exclusive blocs.
It's kind of hypocritical, like avoid exclusive blocks, but that's what they're doing. But they're opening it up to possible more countries coming in, which is fine. It's just the wording's kind of weird.
We need to fully leverage the role of the new development bank, push forward reform of the international financial and monetary systems.
So push reform of the international monetary system. So that means de-dollarization and coming up with a financial reset.
And increase the representation and voice of developing countries. I am glad to see the growing enthusiasm of developing countries about BRICS, about participating in BRICS cooperation, and quite a number of them have applied to join the BRICS cooperation mechanism. We need to make good use of the BRICS Plus cooperation format and accelerate the BRICS expansion process to bring more countries
Accelerate the BRICS expansion process
into the BRICS family, so as to pool our strength, pool our wisdom to make global governance more just,
global governance,
and equitable. Colleagues, as an ancient Chinese saying goes, designs for justice prevail, and acts for the benefit of the people succeed. The cause of BRICS champions international justice and benefits the peoples of our 5 countries. It will grow steady and strong, and make greater contributions to world peace and development.
Okay, so that is Xi Jinping's speech summary. I'm noticing that I'm becoming irritable as I go more and more into my videos about this. So I apologize if that's coming across. All right, so let's keep moving on here. Who do we got next? We have, okay, so so Xi Jinping was saying that, they want to exponentially expand BRICS countries, right, all over the world. So this is the gentleman I follow, Angelo Giuliano. He is a Swiss guy. He's Italian. He lived in Switzerland for quite some time, but he's been living in China since like 1992. And he does some geopolitical videos and conversations with Brian Bertoletic, who I post all the time on my Twitter. But he can give a different kind of perspective as to what's happening in China. Now, he highlights the fact that yes, China, and he doesn't agree with everything that they do, but China, does have less freedoms, but the people choose it because they feel safer and they are more happier with the policies that the Chinese Communist Party has implemented, with regards to facial recognition. They have also digital ID there. They have digital money, like they have money apps already, and social credit systems and stuff like that, which we'll be getting into tomorrow with what's going on with the BRICS countries, because can guarantee you 100% that what the technology that China is using is going to be implemented to some point, to some level within these countries. Okay, and I have quite some information to back that up with. So, and that being said, like around when JFK was around in the 50s, like right after the last dynasty in China was dethroned pretty much, China wanted to be like the United States. And it wasn't until the Communist Party came in, so it wasn't always a communist country. They were striving, they had a good relationship with the United States, and they wanted to be like them. And then the Communist Party came in, and that's when everything kind of went sideways. So, but that's a matter of perspective as well, okay? And a lot of these 15-minute cities and isolate, like a lot of the towns in China, like would they have testing cities and testing towns for all of this kinds of stuff, the same like we do here. Okay, so that being said, so these are some of the, so here he's saying our rest in peace United Nations, IMF, World Bank, and G7. These are all the countries that are interested in joining BRICS. And some of these were, so this was a day before the summit actually started. And so some of these countries were invited into BRICS. So we have Algeria, Argentina, which was invited, Bangladesh, Bahrain, Belarus, Bolivia, Venezuela, Vietnam, Guinea, Greece, Honduras, Egypt, which was invited in, Indonesia, Iran, which was invited in, Cuba, Kuwait, Morocco, Mexico. That'd be interesting. The BRICS nation was bordering onto the United States of America. Nigeria, UAE, which was admitted, Tajikistan, Thailand, Tunisia, Turkey, Syria, Saudi Arabia, and which was Saudi Arabia and Ethiopia were also invited. Okay, moving on. Here is Brazilian President Lula in his statement at the BRICS summit, saying that they have to continue to inspire in building a fair international order. What does that remind you of when they say that? NWO?
Through the new development bank, we can offer our own alternatives for adequate financing that will attend or meet the needs of the global South. I'm sure that under the leadership of my sister Dilma Rousseff, the bank will manage to face these challenges. The creation of a common valued unit for our trade transactions and investments for the BRICS countries will increase our payment options and reduce our vulnerabilities. Presidents, today, and guests, today the BRICS are fully consolidated as a brand and as a political asset of strategic value. The participation of dozens of heads of government and state tomorrow in the enhanced session will represent an historical landmark. The interest of many countries to join the BRICS is the recognition of its growing relevance. And also, we will have a troika at the G20 as members of the BRICS in the period 2023. And so it's another opportunity for us to make advancement of the concerns of the global south with the inequalities and with sustainable development. That the momentum that motivated the creation of BRICS 15 years ago continue to inspire us in building a multipolar, fair, and inclusive international order. Thank you very much.
All right. So he had stated something about sustainable development and an international order. Okay. Now, let's keep going.
We are concerned that global financial and payment systems are increasingly being used as instruments of geopolitical contestation. Global economic recovery relies on predictable global payment systems and the smooth operating of banking, supply chains, trade, tourism, as well as financial flows. We will continue discussions on practical measures to facilitate trade and investment flows through the increased use of local currencies. This is a matter we believe that further discussions need to take place, particularly amongst our finance ministers. The world is changing. New economic, political, social, and technological realities for greater cooperation between nations is essential. New realities call for a fundamental reform of the institutions of global governance so that they may be more representative.
Okay, so that wasn't President Modi, that was, this is the President of South Africa, Ramaphosa. So I had them in the wrong order, I apologize. But so he was talking about the weaponization of financial and payment systems, talking about a new system that's kind of like dealing with liquidity and the flow of payments across the world, which I will touch base on in my next episode about the payment system. Okay, now we have, going back to Modi here, and let's go here.
In order to give the BRICS agenda new direction, India has given some suggestions, such as the Railway Research Network, the online BRICS database, close cooperation between MSMEs, and a startup forum. I am pleased that significant progress has been made in all these areas. Excellencies, in order to further expand our close cooperation, I would like to place before you a few suggestions. The first is cooperation in the area of space. We have already been working on a BRICS satellite constellation. Taking a step forward, we can think about creating a BRICS space exploration consortium. Under this, we can work on areas such as space research and weather monitoring for global good.
Okay, that's interesting. Weather monitoring for global good. What does that mean? I don't know. Okay, moving on. This is something else that, let's just watch it.
It is for this reason that South Africa continues to advocate for an open and rules-based global governance, trade, financial, and investment system. It must be a system that does not depend on the exercise of power or unilateralism, but by advancement of the interests of the peoples of the world. It is for this reason.
Okay, so advancements of the peoples of the world. We care about the people, right? Do you? Do you care, Ramaphosa? All right, we're moving on now. So 6 members of the BRICS countries are also in the top 9 largest oil producing countries in the world. The United States is number 1, Canada is number 4, and it's a shame that we're number 4 and we have such high gas prices. But hey, that's Justin Trudeau for you. So here we go. I thought this was interesting. We have Iran at the bottom, it's 3%. Brazil at the bottom, 3%. UAE is 3.5%. China is 4.5%. And Russia is 10%. And Saudi Arabia is 17%. So that's insane. Okay. Control the oil, control the population.
We're already in a post-American and post-Western world. We're in a truly multipolar world. We're in a world where the BRICS countries are larger than the G7 countries.
Turkey wants to join. Even Turkey and
yes.
Greece want to join the BRICS countries.
One of the points of all of this is the United States does not accept that transition. The United States still believes that this is ultimately a U.S.-led world with 2 recalcitrant actors, Russia and China, and all the rest will come along to understand the realities. And the U.S., in my opinion, is a quarter century out of date. And Europe is a big disappointment in this because there isn't one voice in Europe right now that has a geopolitical outlook that is really even intelligible, basically. But what kind of world we're heading towards really is an open question, because we could be heading towards a world of massive conflict and disaster, or we could actually head towards a world where some intelligent, non-octogenarian leader in the United States arises and says, you know, NATO, we don't need it so much anymore. But what we do need is to have normal relations with China, with India, with Russia, with Brazil, with the...
So now that we're on the last day of the BRICS summit, and they have announced all the new countries that will be invited in. You know, the West has not really been talking a lot or covering the BRICS summit at all, but on the 3rd day they are announcing they're starting to talk about the G20 summit, which is happening in India. And I have something about that here at the end of my video. And also reforming the IMF and the World Bank. Now, we see here that BRICS is making their own version, which is which is called the New Development Bank. So now they're being reactive instead of being proactive. They're being reactive now, saying that they're going to reform the IMF and the World Bank. But you know what? I think that reputation has been soiled, and you can't really reform that. What do you think? Let me know in the comments.
The ongoing BRICS summit is making global headlines, but the White House is busy preparing for the upcoming G20 summit, which is scheduled for next month in New Delhi. Washington says US President Joe Biden will discuss a range of global issues ranging from Putin's invasion of Ukraine to reforms in the IMF and the World Bank. President Biden is expected to confront his Russian counterpart over the invasion of Ukraine. He is also expected to touch upon the economic and social impacts of Putin's war in Ukraine, including the energy crisis it has triggered. He will further discuss joint efforts to tackle the global issues stemming from the Russia-Ukraine war. The White House says these reforms will better serve need of developing countries. Emerging economies like India and China have been demanding such reforms for long. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said the existing Bretton Woods institutions need to offer a better alternative for development support and even financing to what he called China's coercive and unsustainable lending through Belt and Road Initiative.
Right, so the United States is saying that that China and Russia have been putting countries in a debt trap. Well, that is what the IMF and the World Bank has been doing for decades and has not developed or moved any country forward with regards to infrastructure to just put them in worse conditions than they started. Meanwhile, China and Russia actually have even, said that they would cancel countries' debts. That certain countries in Africa and in Asia, they have actually said that you don't have to pay us back. So that is interesting that the United States takes that stance because they feel threatened, right?
At the G20 summit, Sullivan said Biden will really focus a lot of his energy on the modernization of the multilateral development banks, including the World Bank and the IMF, adding that the aim is to ensure that the development banks offer high standard, high leverage solutions to the challenges developing countries face. He called the two institutions highly effective and transparent, contrasting that to Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative. That is, contrasting that to Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative. The BRI is a decade-old program. It seeks to extend China's weight in global development that has involved large infrastructure and industrial loans to poorer countries. Sullivan said the US will push proposals in New Delhi that will increase World Bank and IMF lending power by some $200 billion. The White House official, however, stressed that as a member of the G20 and a key partner in the IMF and World Bank,
and then suddenly.
Okay, so as you can see here, they said they want to reform the IMF and the World Bank. And what is this day? This is 2 days later after the 23rd, so this is August the 25th. And we have Christine Lagarde, the past operational manager of the IMF, at Jackson Hole, meeting with the Federal Reserve and other central bankers from all around the world. And this is what she said that meeting is about.
Hello to all of you, and I would like to share this magnificent panorama that is behind me. It is the setting of the Jackson Hole conference that takes place every year. It is a little bit like the Sintra of the West, except it's been around for longer. Many central bank governors, many academics, many experts in monetary policy and on the economy in general will be gathering for 2 days, and we will talk about the current situation, the major shifts that we are seeing, the major breaks, and how we can best respond with good policies that will...
So major shifts and major breaks, and they're going to respond with more policies. So major shifts in the financial system, major breaks in the financial system. And what policies, what kind of policies do you think can help this?
Will actually help bring inflation back to 2%. This is the goal, this is the mission. We're not done yet. We are working hard, but we also have to compare notes and share our views with others so that we can have really the highest level of confidence that we are taking everything into account. But this is a very inspiring place to do it.
All right. So they're not going to give up with a fight, apparently. Just remember, like, this is all like a movie, okay? Okay, so this is just a little bit of a fast forward to September when we have the G20. And listen to what their agenda is here. It's foreshadowing.
A very good morning to all of you.
India is hosting the G20 summit this year. And for the grouping, this is a crucial moment. For long, the G20 has catered to a Western world. It may include members of the global South. But when it came to their issues, the G20 turned a blind eye. But not this time. Heading this year's presidency is New Delhi. and it wants to champion the voice of the global south. India wants G20 nations to rise above differences. It wants them to address global challenges. The likes of climate change.
Climate change is the first thing that they say. Okay?
Cybersecurity.
Cybersecurity. They have been calling for cyber attacks. The World Economic Forum has made videos about cyber attacks taking out infrastructure and having blackouts that'll be worse than the previous pandemic that we have just gone through.
And water scarcity.
Water scarcity. Remember in my last video where it says you control the water, you control the population.
It wants the group to use its collective expertise to ensure a prosperous future for all. So what are the issues India will raise at this G20 summit? First, debt relief for developing nations. During the Cold War, the global south was vulnerable. They needed money. The West was wary of communist influence, so they dished out funds. Then came other development projects in the 21st century. Thus came more funds. The gains have withered away, but the debts remain. So New Delhi will push for global debt relief.
Global debt relief. Okay, so that is another theory that has been pushed as well to usher in the new financial reset, is that because if all banks go under, let's say there was some black swan event and the debt situation has just gone too out of control, they might collapse the whole system and everyone's debt is going to be, like even people, everyone's debt is going to be annihilated and erased. But then they're going to come in with this like problem reaction solution. They're going to come in with the solution, and it's like CBDCs. They already have a new system in place. And then if you want to use it, say, hey, we erased your debt, but now you have to use this digital ID and you have to utilize our CBDC. That might not be the only solution. That might be just one aspect of the new financial system. But, it's funny that they're mentioning global debt relief. And I know they're talking about countries, but it's just, you need to pay attention to these little synchronicities, okay? Because they tell you exactly what they're going to do before they do it.
It will ask lending nations, including China, to take a haircut on loans. The second is climate financing.
Climate financing.
Climate change is upon all of us, but the global south is bearing the brunt first. It may not have contributed to the historic emissions.
The global south may have not contributed to the carbon emissions. What planet am I living on right now? But I'm sorry, but India and China have been one of the worst culprits in Indonesia of pollution. And now I'm going to rewind that part because that is just fricked up.
Take a haircut on loans. The second is climate financing. Climate change is upon all of us, but the global south is bearing the brunt first. It may not have contributed to the historic emissions, but it is dealing with the results of it.
Okay, so they're playing the fire, they're playing the floods, so the whole world's going through this, but it's just the West's car use and the cows on the farms that are causing this climate crisis, not industrial waste in India and China. Okie dokie.
There are extreme floods, heat waves, and cyclones.
I thought we've had this for perpetuity.
So India wants to push for more climate financing, more money from developed economies.
Money for climate, because we're going to fix the climate with money.
They pledged $100 billion before, but that's not enough. The global south needs more. And the third is managing the G20's credibility. It is the premier forum for international economic cooperation. But there are internal battles and a lack of focus, issues that are hampering its credibility and thus its effectiveness. But with 3 emerging economies holding back-to-back presidencies, the G20 has a unique opportunity: address historic inequalities, manage the internal rifts, and champion the voice of the Global South. India plans to do all of this come September.
No, I didn't catch it here, but it's in my notes that they said that they want to get money from the developed economy. So they're trying to redistribute wealth for climate. Okay. I'm getting very irritable. I'm sorry. This content is making me pissed off, and I apologize. Okay, so we're almost at the end here. Sprinter here says that Moscow, and I did see this in a video as well, I just don't know where I put it, that Western countries might also be able to become BRICS members, but under one condition. Countries that want to join BRICS can do so under one condition: they must not introduce sanctions against countries that are members of the organization, said Deputy Minister Foreign Affairs of Russia, Sergei Rybakov. Right? So this might very well be the transition to the new monetary system. They are moving control from the west to the east, and eventually other countries can come along. Okay. And now to end here, there's a difference between the BRICS Bank and BRICS nations. So the BRICS Bank is now accepting 4 to 5 new members after the summit, and those are, so that would be Bangladesh, UAE, Egypt, and Uruguay. And so that's different than membership to the BRICS nations, and we'll be touching upon this a little bit more in the last video. Okay, so that being said, I would just like to thank everyone for your patience with me today. My first 2 videos were, I didn't even have to edit anything pretty much. Like the first video I edited nothing. The second video I edited 1 thing in the beginning, and then this video I have like more than 20 things I'm gonna need to edit. So like it's not very smooth, and I think I might have to take an internet break after this series. But thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe if you enjoy this content. This is a very important time in our lives, and I hope that this information was valuable to you. We'll end off here with a reminder that tells us that all the world is a stage, and all of the men and women are merely players. Thank you again, and have a wonderful day.